At 42 years of age and after 72 professional fights, the end is surely here for Manny Pacquiao, beaten by Yordenis Ugas in Las Vegas. This is After the Bell, Mirror Fighting's boxing show with me, Martin Domin, and with my regular guests, Barry Jones and Declan Taylor. As I said, Pacquiao was beaten on points, 116, 112 twice, 115, 113. I don't think there were any arguments over the result. Perhaps the scorecards could have been wider, but thankfully, no controversy. Barry, how much of that defeat was down simply to Manny Pacquiao being, or Father Time catching up with Manny Pacquiao?
Yeah, pretty much all of it. And no, as we spoke last week, that was always the worry, that you can't go to the well forever. But Ugas is good. He's tricky. He's awkward. He has those long reach. He's a long reach, and he doesn't look pretty, but he's massively effective. He's economically very good, and I think he carries a bit of sting in his pop and his punches. And I think that's what put Pacquiao off. But the jab slowed Pacquiao down. You know, anyone with fast feet and fast hands, you have to slow him down somehow. And that left jab of Ugas was brilliant. Just stopped Pacquiao from starting attacks or continuing. He likes to throw one and then throw four, doesn't he, Pacquiao? I think what I noticed with Pacquiao, his hand speed was still there. His foot speed had gone. So he was still fast enough, but not as fast as he was. He used to be like so quick to get around the target. His feet would move so fast. It was like he was on ice skates, and you wouldn't know how he got around you. And he did that so well with people like Cotto and stuff. But the feet weren't as fast as they were in yesteryear, and I think that's where he was getting caught with right hands as he was trying to move around the target because he didn't have that sharpness, I guess is the word we're probably looking for. He looked like the Pacquiao of old at stages, but everything just lacked that little bit of sharpness, crispness that he had at his peak. So let's hope we never see him again in a competitive fight. Let's hope that.
To be honest, Declan, we've been talking about, is this the end for Pacquiao, or at least has time caught up with him for quite a few years now? And of course, 2 years ago against Keith Thurman, he defied those odds and impressed. It was 2 years out of the ring. We shouldn't really be surprised, but I guess there was always that question, well, he looks so good, he talks so well, maybe he can just somehow defy the odds.
Yeah, and it wasn't, I agree. We thought the Thurman fight would be a bridge too far, and it's gone on since then. To be fair, a lot of people didn't expect him to come back after the big Marquez knockout, which was ages ago. He was barely, he was in his 30s at that point. So, I don't know, it wasn't your classic, get old in the ring overnight either. It wasn't one where he's turned up and he's just like, I can't do this anymore. Barry's right. He just wasn't really at the races. And because his feet weren't fast enough, he missed a lot. He was just reaching a lot. And Steven Espinoza tweeted that Ugas did what Mayweather did and nullified it. It doesn't mean that he did a Mayweather type performance, but he neutralized Pacquiao. And when he's neutralized, he's not landing anything. And you're like, all of this whole whirlwind, this whole hummingbird situation is actually useless, and there's no point to it. It's all just, nothing's actually effective off the back of it. And I think that's exactly what Ugas did. He used his height well. I thought it was, to be honest, a pretty unentertaining fight, actually. Ugas made it so. It was.
Sorry, I've got to say, when have you ever said that about a Pacquiao fight?
Exactly. That's exactly right. That was, and you would think he started the first round. He was like a train. He was like, okay, this is great. Ugas looks like he's caught up in something here, and then he just slowed down, and it was just pedestrian for a lot of it. And I think that is to be fair, there were times when I was just thinking, I'm glad he's not in there with Errol Spence here, because that could have been a bit of a problem for him, on the end of some big shots. Ugas never really hurt him at any point. You're right, Barry. The jab was obviously great, but also for a taller man, the right hand to the body, you don't often see a taller guy landing that against a shorter guy because it's just too far to get. He got called a couple of times, certainly once, and stopped for a low blow, which I don't think it was, to be honest. And he was using that shot to great effect, just properly taking the wind out of Pacquiao. And it was just, the rounds were just ticking by, and you were just thinking, no, there's nowhere for him to go. He can't land. He's never going to stop this guy. And yeah, it was kind of a sad one, but at the same time, hopefully that is how he goes out, and he doesn't go out getting cleaned out by someone who would never have been on his level in the past.
The worry for me is that he's still good. He was still beat a lot of welterweights. I'm not saying the top four, but he was still beat a lot. And that's the worry, that he can still be competitive and he could still pick up a title somewhere, maybe, if Spence were to move up or, not have to, give up one of his titles, then there'd be an opportunity for him. And I think that's the worry for me. I think sometimes, it's horrible to say it, sometimes a real hammering is what you need to retire. I had one, but it's, sometimes, winning, losing a close fight or just being like that was, for the Pacquiao fight, was uneventful. So I could have done a bit more. I could have been a bit more, could I be, and also you as a fighter, you've got a kid throughout your whole life. You lie to yourself, to build that false confidence to produce real confidence. So you say, I got an injury, I've been out for 2 years. You look for excuses why you didn't perform at your best. And I think he might do that, and that's the worry, because he should have retired 10 years ago, really, earned a lot of money before then. He did more since then, but he earned a lot of money, enough to retire on, or should have for sure. And he'd had a Hall of Fame career by that point. But he's kept on. And is it always looking for the extra dollar? I don't know. Where does it end for him? That's the worry. Because, the older you get and the punches you're taking now, it accelerates the deterioration of your life. That's the truth. And being at 42 years now, he's not going to be the same man as most 52-year-olds in 10 years' time if he continues to fight. And that's just the bare facts. And we sort of shy away from these statistics that are not really brought to the forefront of boxers after they retire. But it has an effect on you. It really does. And I think the longer you go, potentially the worse that is. There you go. There's nothing help boxing in general, really, but you don't want to see a great fighter like him who's been a hero for so many fans and boxers alike, because he's just gone looking to fight the best. He had 9 fights with not the 3 best Mexicans, but 3 of the best Mexicans of all time, and he had 9 fights with those 3. Why would you want to do that? That's enough to finish anyone's career, even if you won them all. That's a tiring 9-fight run of fights for anyone. But then he went looking for everyone. He went looking at weights and cottos, and no one was big enough for him. No one was too big for him. No one was too hard for him. No one was too fast for him. He just went looking for the next challenge. And I've never known a fighter like that. In my lifetime, I've never known a fighter like it. I'm not saying he's the best fighter of all time, but maybe the most imaginative, for looking for fights, the most courageous in that way, where he was always looking to test himself. And you have to give him that credit.
The truth is, based on everything you said, that I'd be surprised if we never see him again. I think you're right that because the nature of the fight, it was sort of, there is a door back in, there is a route back in. And let's be honest, if Amir Khan and Kell Brook fight at the end of this year and Khan wins, or to be honest, whoever wins out of those two, you could see next summer Saudi Arabia or Macau or sort of just load of money and both pass the best. He would look at either of them and be like, well, neither, they're not going to hurt me. And he'd probably go again for that. And I think there's still one left in there at least.
And that's the worry, because they get paid so much.
Yeah.
You can go, how much is enough? How much is enough? But nothing is enough, because you might have 100 million in the bank, but someone's offering you 10 million for keeping fit for 12 weeks and watching your diet, looking after yourself, pretty much what it is, and then boxing for 36 minutes of hard work potentially. And it's almost hard to say. I would come back tomorrow for 1% of that. That's the truth of it, to be honest. For that money, unless I had like David Hay coming back. If he's offered silly money, I think he's exaggerating how much he's really offered. But whatever, if he's offered $500,000 to box Joe Fournier, that's £500,000 what he sees as an incredibly easy night's work. So how can you turn that down? That's pretty much, he's looking at it as a public appearance and after dinner speech. That's the way he looks at it. For he's saying it was more money than the Bellew fight, so it's millions. But I doubt it's that, really, to be honest. But even if it's hundreds of thousands, you're looking at money for nothing. So why wouldn't you take it? But we slag all these people off, and rightly so, because we love our sport. No, we don't want to see Pacquiao get hurt. We don't want to see people humiliate the sport and bring it down to like just an entertainment business only. But you can't blame the people in it. What was it? Hate the game, not the player. Whatever. You're younger. You guys are younger. You know that. Whatever saying that is. And it's true, isn't it? It's they're in the game. The game's dictating how it given to him. Where did that go from? Wow, that was weird. Whew.
But there is always that option now, of course, of exhibition fights, but perhaps Pacquiao will indeed turn to politics. I'm no expert on the politics of the Philippines, but if he does indeed run for president and is indeed successful, wherever you're president, you don't have time for a professional boxing career, whether it's one fight or not, surely. So maybe that will be the one saving grace.
Yeah, you would think so, but then he's managed to do, what is he now, a senator, and he's managed to carry on through that. And it's almost like his whole superstardom is based off the back of boxing, and people know him for that. So I think he would be sort of given a pass from the Filipino people who wouldn't necessarily say, hold on a sec, mate, you're supposed to be our president. Why are you in a training camp? Because that's what he does. When Vitaly Klitschko got more involved in it, it was obvious then that he'd moved away from boxing. There was no comeback because that was what he was focusing on. But I know what you're saying, because that was my immediate thought. Is, you know, a lot of boxers, you think, well, what are they going to do now? He's obviously got his hands full with a lot of, he's got a whole country to run potentially. But I don't think that would preclude him from a 12-week training camp and a fight at the end of it. I really don't. But I think time will tell. I'm like you. I don't know what the situation is with that, what it takes for him to now become president. If he does, I don't really know where he goes from here. But I wouldn't put a knife in his boxing career because of that. If anything, I'd sort of see it as, like Barry was suggesting there, with the challenges he looks for. Imagine going and having a fight as the president of the Philippines. It would just be something else for him to achieve.
Well, I'm a vice president of the Welsh Ex-Boxers Association, so there's sort of like a segue there where we could fight each other.
You can make a catch weight.
And I'll take the 1%. I'll take the 1% of the gate. But the thing is, whatever Pacquiao does, I'll watch him. That's the truth. Like, you know, like I don't want him to fight again for the potential health implications, and I want to remember him as what he was. But I'll watch him because he's, you know, that fight wasn't an exciting fight, but it was an intriguing fight, and it wasn't a horrible fight to watch. I quite enjoyed it. I watched it again this morning actually, but he's mainly usually and always in exciting fights, and also. It's almost impossible for him to enhance. I don't think he will enhance on his career. I don't think he'll get another great win again. But I also don't think he will worsen his career by having loads of bad losses now either. I don't want to see him do that. But I think he's cemented his case now for a great fighter. Whatever he does, you cannot forget what he's done. That's one of those things. Like Roy Jones went on for too long and sort of soured a bit of his greatness, because his greatness was all about being unbeatable, where Pacquiao's was never about that. His was about, I'll fight anyone, anywhere, anytime, and you know, if I don't beat you, you know, you've had the fight of your life, and that's all it always was. So you remember him more for that, and because he did that, he's sort of like for any sportsman, any person, any fighter, he was one of those guys. You got to be in it to win it. Dream to believe, and all those little sayings. But he did it. You don't know if you're going to be great. You don't know if you're going to win unless you just take the leap of faith and believe in yourself. And he did that. So for any young kid to watch, it's about, you know, protecting you're protecting yourself and your undefeated record's one thing, but branching out there and taking that risk is what great fighters do. And I think he showed that.
You mentioned it earlier, Declan. Had that been Errol Spence in there, it might not have been so. If not, you know, I guess it was a reasonably comfortable defeat, let's put it that way. I know there's always someone with a pound note ready to say fight, but do we think there's at least enough people who will say, don't fight Errol Spence, don't fight Terence Crawford? If you are going to come back, maybe, like you say, the Cam Brook win or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be the demand from the network now off the back of last night for a Spence fight, for instance. I just don't see there being any clamour from fans or anything like that, because everyone would have looked at that same and been like, okay, he's been basically outboxed and comfortably so, you know, relatively comfortable victory for Ugas, really. Why would we want to see him anywhere near Spence or Crawford? There are slightly other stranger ones like Khan Booker, but also I heard mention of like Gervonta Davis and things like that. I could see something like that more likely. And no, I don't think there's enough people around him who say don't do that, because he's the boss. I think that he would still box anyone that is offered. I don't see him shying away from anything. I just think maybe those top guys now, the clamour's gone for that, because they're only getting better. And off the back of last night, who would want to see it. But you never know with boxing, do you? Because it's not like welterweight. They've all been fighting each other, routinely. It's a nightmare division. There are constantly roadblocks and stuff and politics involved. So maybe he still does get one of the top two, say, but I can't see it myself. Davis fight is a little bit more. I could see that happening. Even like Josh Taylor or someone like that. He's still a colossal name if you want to do a proper event and a proper attraction. But I just think the Spence fight surely has to be gone. I hope it's gone now.
I don't think so. I think that where they're going to put Spence, Spence and Crawford are not going to fight each other. I think that's a given. And so Spence and Pacquiao is still a bigger fight than Spence and Ugas. That's the problem you have. It's still a more marketable fight. And people can spin it. 115, 113 was one card. Well, that's a round and a half turnaround, isn't it? All of a sudden, no. If I would have had 2 years out, and I would have, and they can spin it that way. You can't have that many years out when you're this age, but I'm fit and I showed in stage how good I was. I didn't see it that way, but the judges had it closer, and still, because he's a name, still one last hurrah. He's come back before from defeats and been a better fighter. All that build up they will do, which he has in his career, of course, time and time again. He's still a bigger name. Ugas, no one's going to be jumping over fences to watch Ugas versus Spence or Ugas versus Terence Crawford. They're not, but everyone will turn up to watch Crawford box Pacquiao next week, and the same with Spence. And I don't want to see it because I think he gets a bit of a turning over judged on last night's performance. And you tend to think he don't get any better than that now. You would feel at this age, I can't see how he can. But then I said that about when Jeff Horn beat him. This is the end of Pacquiao. Now he was still competitive, but he shouldn't have been competitive against this sort of opposition. And that was the problem. But then he turned his life around again and brought something new to the table like he always does. But like I said last week, I'll bet against him every fight now because he just can't keep producing the quality. It's impossible. It's superhuman what he's done already. But, it has to come to an end. But I think this fight's out there. I think those big fights are still achievable for him. And that's my worry. That because while the money's there and the big fights are there, the big names are there, he'll want to continue.
You mentioned superhuman. He won his first world title back in 1998 at 112 pounds.
I was still fighting.
He went through the divisions, 8 in total. I think the answer to this is probably obvious, but can we ever expect to see anyone do something similar ever again?
I can't see it.
I can't see it, but the way boxing is now, they'll introduce new weights and more titles, and someone might do it. That's the issue. See, what he's done has been tremendous, but he's only done it because there's been more opportunities to do it. That's not slag boxing off. But either way, let's get all that. He's been phenomenal. For the little tiny little guy to be to box people like Margarito, who's a giant, and it's unthinkable. It's just you would never, just not in your lifetime, you just couldn't see it. When you actually sit down and really digest it all, you just go, no chance. I must have been. I've seen it, but I don't quite believe he did it. I'm reading that he did it, but this must be a mistake because no one could do that. A little flyweight, from Thailand. Who, by the way, if you've ever seen pictures of him when he early in his career, I mean, he's a bag of bones, and that's me saying that. Like, he's a bag of bones. He's nothing on him, and and all of a sudden, then he's going up against a big, strong, welterweight in Miguel Cotto and beating him up. You just go, what? How did that happen? I think you're right. I think you're both right, Declan. Right, I don't think we'll see his kind again.
Just look at Sonny Edwards now. Great fighter, won his world title. Now imagine him going and boxing a light middleweight for a world title. It's just ridiculous. It's just,
he'd be tweeting you now. He'd be tweeting you in about 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I reckon he could beat some light welterweights. Sonny. When you got skills and stuff, you can go up, but you can't.
You can't. It's certainly.
It's just insane.
They step on you.
Yeah.
The thing with Pacquiao is he got more punching power as he moved up in weights than he did at lower weights. It was just the weirdest thing. It's just like all the things that you should know, the speed and the skills, and that helps you. But that's what and it was the speed was the main factor, and the hyperactive movements that he had around the targets what made him different, and made him hard. He didn't box like a boxer. That's the difference. That's why his movements weren't boxing movements, and that's what confused everybody. but the power that he didn't maintain, he added. Every time he moved up a weight, he added more power. How do you do that? I mean, you mature as you get older. I can punch a bit now than I couldn't punch when I boxed, ironically. But, and so that's weight and also understanding your body a little bit better and slowing down and pushing off your feet and all that rubbish. But, I mean, he went up in levels of power. He became a power puncher. And that's like, how did that happen? It's weird. You get some secret sauce or whatever it is. And some people are just great. Some people are just great. Whatever the rumors were, either way, some people are just great at doing stuff, and he's an all-time great. That whatever happens now, the rest of his career, whatever happened, he's an all-time great. And we've been blessed and lucky to be able to see him. And you have to, we have to just realize that, and give a nod of appreciation. He's not Welsh, of course. So he loses a few points for that. But
I think he is somewhere. I think his granddad was from Barry.
His father used to deliver the milk in Penchwyn in Cardiff, and that's the truth. just
a note on Ugas. What's best for him?
How much do you look like Tevin Farmer, by the way? It's ridiculous. I tweeted last night. I want to see him fight. It will never happen. It's such a shame, but it's unbelievable. I'd love to see him. I've never seen him in the same room. Certainly not in the same ring. So,
if anyone has, by all means, let us know. Yeah. Does he cash out now against Crawford or against Spence? I say cash out. Maybe you give him a chance. Maybe I'm being harsh.
He just got the best career win, and I think he was impressive in doing it. And you've got to forget by the age of Pacquiao, he just beat Pacquiao. So he goes in now, with a little bit of first time in his life, with some bargaining chips on the table for the first time. He's an awkward style. He looks beatable when you see him. He looks very beatable because he does nothing phenomenal, but he's very accurate, economical. You got a long reach, and he's heavy with his strength and his hands. I don't think he's a big puncher, but I think every shot you feel it. And I think that's what Pacquiao took with the jab. It wasn't a knockout punch, but it was enough to hit you off balance. And I think he's one of those. So he's an awkward fighter for anyone. Would he beat Spence? No, and I don't think he'd beat Crawford. But he might become. He's got a title, so while he has a title, he has some sort of bargaining chip. He doesn't want. Once he loses his title, he becomes another Sean Porter. And no one wants to fight him because it's a hard fight where you gain nothing. You gain nothing from it. That's where his worry is. So I think he looks for Spence. If Spence ever comes back, that's the worry. I think we might have seen the last of Errol Spence. We're talking about Pacquiao. They might literally this fight might have retired 2 fighters, ironically, and only one of them boxed. Yeah.
On that note, that is it for this week. Next weekend, Sunday night sees. Can I say?
Oh, Canelo! Hold on. It's worth a mention, actually. Big moment.
November the 6th.
Finally,
Canelo going for all the belts. Don't forget, Las Vegas against Caleb Plant. I wore this especially. The pound for pound number 1.
Caleb Plant. There's another Welshman. He grew up in Carmarthen, didn't he?
What's that?
Caleb Plant grew up in Carmarthen, I think.
He comes with good stock. See, they're proper miners, all of them. To be honest,
They're good to see another division set to be completely unified.
Unless it's a draw like the other one the other day.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. But it's good.
Someone put on Twitter the other day. They said we all moan about the belts, and we all do. But then when we get a unified champion, we sort of applaud him and go, yes. But we all slag the belts off and we do. I'm one of the worst for it. But then once we get a unified champion, we go, well done, mate. But we can't have it both ways, can we? But the thing with Canelo, forget about the belts, and it's nice that he ties it all up. He's always looking for he's another Pacquiao in many ways. But I think he gets criticised for his opponents. I don't know why, and he's always looking for the next challenge. He's moved up weights. He's boxing beyond the natural weight for me, that I think, for him. And he's always looking for the next best fighter to fight. Who wants to fight Billy Joe Saunders? Even if you think you can beat him, it's a potentially nightmare. Caleb Plant's another one. He's real fast feet and fast hands, and he doesn't look fantastic. But he's a nightmare to fight. But he wants to fight him. Who wants to box a 6'4" guy with a really good solid jab and a really good uppercut in Callum Smith? Canelo does, the 5'7" lunatic, or 5'8", whatever he is. He wants to fight him. He could have had no. And bear in mind, these fighters, Pacquiao and also Canelo, they get big money whoever they fight. It doesn't matter to Canelo. He gets 20 million. He gets 20 million for boxing me, and he gets 25 million for boxing Callum Smith. Do you know? Or 35, whatever the money is. So it's not. He gets huge money anyway. So he can just pick it. He can just cherry pick any of your opponent, and he doesn't. And you have to. In a world where we moan and groan about people not fighting each other, we have a fighter here who's willing and looking to fight the best out there. And again, we'll look back at this generation after this fit, like we did in the 90s for the heavyweights. We'll look back in 10 years after this generation and go, you know what, I was pretty good, actually. You don't appreciate it when you're in it. We're always looking to moan about stuff. But actually, you look back and go, wow, what a generation of fights they were. Josh Taylor, the Welsh Scotsman who went on to unify the title, and met my cousin Josh, and things like that. You just look back and go, wow, we didn't think we'd ever see that. We didn't see that in the 2000s, and now we're seeing it now. And
of course, that includes Jake Paul as well, I guess.
And Jake Paul, forget about that. Let him carry. Who cares about that? Like I'm at peace with it all now. I don't care. Like they fight. Who cares? It's because it's not aimed at us. They shouldn't have pro records. They shouldn't have pro licenses. To be honest, it should be harder to be a professional boxer. But it is what it is. So, it's not taken away from the fights we're seeing. That's the most important thing. We're not having that as a substitute to Canelo and so on. We're not having that as a substitute to Joshua and Usyk. We're still getting that fight. We're still getting Fury and Wilder whenever that happens in 2030. But we're still getting the fights. They're just them other fights. It's just people who've seen an opportunity to win loads of money from our sports.
By the way, I reckon he could be the best ever, certainly current 3-fight novice who's never set foot in an amateur boxing club in his life. He could be the best in the world at that, actually. So good on him, Jake Paul.
Well, he's not, is he? That's a bollocking statement. He's the best marketed boxer there's ever been, possibly. If that's the thing. He's earning millions, but I think you're judging him on his popularity or his wealth. That's like Conor McGregor is the best. Like one. Do you have one fight? He's the best one fight professional boxer of all time. Do you have one or two? I don't know when he fights. I don't, because he's one. There's no. Mayweather. I got no interest in him because he's a UFC guy. I don't watch that. So, but he made more money than anyone else. He's one of the top 3-5 earners of all time, probably in boxing, if it's true what they said he earned in that fight. And he's the best loser there's ever been in boxing, if that's the case. But he's not really, is he? He's not, because there's a list of fighters now, right down to British level and Southern area and an area title level in the UK who would beat him, probably. But it doesn't matter, because that's almost not boxing. That's what you got to think of it of like that. But people like Canelo are always looking for the next great. They're real fights against real fighters, and they're putting it all on the line to be great. And let's not forget that. So we're having all these other stuff, but in between all them, and more, we're having more of the quality stuff. We're having more of the Josh Taylor's, boxing Ramirez's, and the Barancheks and the Apostles and people like that who are always looking to fight great fighters. They never want an easy fight to get to superstar status, and Canelo's another one. And Pacquiao was the one who showed us all how a career, Hall of Fame career, should be, searching for that greatness.
I should just say that for anybody listening and not watching, Barry Jones is wearing a Canelo t-shirt, hence the references. But as you said, Jake Paul is back in action next Sunday. Takes on former UFC welterweight champion Tyron Woodley. But on the undercard, Tommy Fury, Daniel Dubois, both in action. Tommy Fury potentially angling for a fight, indeed, with Jake Paul. We'll be back on Bank Holiday Monday to discuss those fights.
Just before we sign off, Martin, I know you're a UFC head. Tyron Woodley, is he? What's he saying boxing wise? Is he one of the ones who can strike, or is he one that can't?
He definitely can strike a lot better than Jake Paul's last opponent, Ben Askren.
Can he punch though?
Cool.
A strike and a punch is two different things. I feel. Listen, the UFC, right? I can't understand it because it's quite technical, the floor stuff, but they're tough. I know that they're tough, honourable men. So because I don't watch it, I don't appreciate how hard it is. Like, I wouldn't want to bump into. I'd rather bump into a boxer in the street than one of those in the street. I'd tell you that any day of the week. But different sports at the high level are different things, and yeah, if you can hold your hands up. I worry about defense for him. What's he like for blocking shots and stuff like that?
You're right. The difference between striking, he's better striker than he's a better puncher, but he's also facing Jake Paul, who I think somehow has been elevated by his own, as you say, excellent marketing, has been elevated into something he's possibly not. So I suspect Jake Paul is the odds-on favourite, but I think Tyron Woodley will give a much better showing, and I think his striking / punching may well be good enough. It wouldn't be good enough against a boxer for sure, but it could be good enough. Certainly, it should give Jake Paul some problems. So, listen, it could be entertaining.
Lovely.
And that's what we want. That's what we want, of course, isn't it?
So, BT Sport Box Office. There you go. There's the advert. If you don't tune in, or you do tune in, join us next week to look back at that and discuss all the fallout. Until then, do take care.